Welcome back, investor. I have a guest on today. I was on his podcast several months ago about emotional maturity and conflict resolution. And I thought this is the perfect topic to bring to my audience because we're dealing with some emotionally charged issues with money, wealth building, could be like career exploration, self discovery, conflicts with your spouse or partner who is a stakeholder in these very important financial and investing decisions. And then if we are successful, what are we going to do with the life after we've built wealth, after we have retired early, and especially after our kids are looking at inheriting what we've built? And so these things are so rife with conflict. Money can really be a source of great pleasure and success and feelings of belonging in the world and a tool to create the life we want, but can also be our biggest downfall. So today we have on Doug Noll. He's joining us. He is a lawyer turned peacemaker, conflict resolution expert, and award-winning author who helps people from prisoners to high achievers figure out what their emotional blocks or ability to communicate and be heard are, and help us get past some of these things that are holding us back so that we can really go into the biggest version of ourselves. Thank you for coming on the show today, Doug.
Thanks. It's great to be here. First, to everybody that's listening, do me a huge favor. Go to whatever platform you're on and give Emma a 5-star
I
review
love
right now. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Give her a 5-star review while you're listening, because the only way that podcast hosts like Emma and her terrific show get notoriety and build is because people mark the show. So if you're here listening, that's what you got to do. First thing. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am, as you said, Emma, I'm a lawyer turned peacemaker. I practiced law for 22 years and then went back to school, earned my master's degree in peacemaking and conflict studies. And in 2000, 25 years ago, I left $10 million on the table, walked away from my law practice, and became a peacemaker. So along the way, I mean, it seems like everything I've done in my life that's important has been done after I turned 50. I left the practice of law. I've written 4 books. Number 5 is on the way. It'll be out next year. I've been honored as California Lawyer Magazine Attorney of the Year, Best Lawyers in America Lawyer of the Year, and a whole bunch of other honors. I co-founded Prison of Peace with my dear friend and colleague, Laurel Coffer, and for 10 years, worked in California and Connecticut prisons, training life and long-term inmates how to stop prison violence, using a skill that we're going to be talking about here on the show today. I've trained tens of thousands of professionals of all different stripes, and on how to take these difficult situations and transform them literally in seconds. So, for example, if you're an investor, the understanding that all investing is emotional, there's no such thing as rationality, becomes really important. And when you get emotional, biases are going to come into your decision-making process. So if you're not able to manage your emotions, then you're going to have problems when the markets go down, like they have with the last week or two, right? Bitcoin's dropped 33%. We're in a big corrective phase in the stock markets. I'm an aggressive stock investor. Watched, I'm not in the market right now, but it's crazy. Or more importantly, you're a couple and you're investing. Well, that investing layers on a whole new emotional level in your relationship. And how do you confront each other? Hey, honey, I lost $10,000 today. What do we
Yep.
do? How do you have those conversations without them blowing up? And the secret, and what I teach, is you learn how to ignore the words and listen to the emotions, and then reflect the emotions. And we'll talk about this more. But what neuroscience, this is not based on pop psychology. This is hard neuroscience. The seminal study came out in 2007. And what it showed, by watching how the brain actually operates on a functional magnetic resonance imaging protocol, is that when we label another person's emotions, we downshift the centers of the brain that are associated with negative emotions so that we literally calm down. And at the same time, we activate a part of the brain called the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, which is our thinking brain. That's the executive function of our brain. So just by me naming your emotions, Emma, I am calming you down and activating your brain so that you can start thinking again. And the whole process takes 90 to 120 seconds.
Yes. This is a bold claim. And I want to dive into, because I know it takes 90 to 120 seconds to diffuse the conflict, which for those of us who have families or business partners and these types of high stakes relationships, we know that it can either go right at the beginning, or it goes wrong for a long time. But 90 to 120 seconds is definitely a real thing, but it takes a lot longer than 90 to 120 seconds to learn it, which is why you have several books out and why you have done a lot of training, why you have your own show talking about these kinds of issues. So let's just get into the first steps of learning this claim. So our target listener, I'm listening to you right now, but the people who tend to listen to the show are other high achievers, people who have big dreams, big goals. They have maybe overcome detractors. They feel like they have a broad range of emotional identification. They know lots of different emotional words, and they feel like maybe their logic and their emotions are in good harmony. I think I'm a little bit self-delusional in that way, but the high achiever that feels like they're doing pretty well in this department, and only to discover that they're having blocks and things that are problems in their relationships that are holding them back from what they really want. So
Right.
start me down that road of how someone like that can start learning your technique
Sure.
and where it would be helpful to apply in our own lives.
Right. So let's start off with some basic mindset shifts. The first thing you have to do when you're mastering these skills is abandon reasoning and abandon the idea that we're rational beings. There is no science. There is no science, nothing. There's not a study out there that supports the concept that human beings are rational.
Okay.
Every single study for the last 30 years demonstrates without question that we are emotional beings.
Okay.
Every decision we make is emotional, and every behavior we engage in is emotional. This idea of rationality goes back 2,500 years to Plato. It's been carried forward with philosophers and theologians all the way up until the 20th century, up till von Neumann and Morgenstern came out with rational choice theory in the late 1940s and were immediately proven to be wrong. Okay, so this is really hard to do, to let go of the idea of rationality, because it's so acculturated into us. And we've been trained in all of this stuff that we're rational beings. Not true. We are not rational. Human beings have never been rational. We have the ability to engage in deliberative thinking, but that does not define who we are as beings. We are defined by our emotions. So that's the first big mind shift. And once you make that shift, once you begin to realize, wow, I'm an emotional being and everybody else around me is emotional, all of a sudden the chaos now makes sense. Because when you're judging people by a standard of rationality, they can't meet that standard ever, because they're not rational. And if you're judging people by a standard that they can't meet, then it's all you see is chaos. Why can't they do this? That's the first mind shift. Now, the second thing to recognize is that since we are all emotional and everything we do is emotional, then we have to learn how to listen to and reflect the emotional experiences of ourselves and the emotional experiences of other people. And here's where it gets a little tricky, because emotions are data, just like numbers on a spreadsheet. So just imagine that we're all investors, and let's say we want to analyze a company, and all we have in front of us are invoices and canceled checks and bank statements and payroll stubs and cash disbursement slips and receipts. And that's all we got. And it's just this one huge pile of data. Can we tell what the profit and loss of that company is with that data? Absolutely not. It's unstructured.
Yeah.
What do we have to do? We have to get somebody somehow to take all that data and put it into a spreadsheet, and then analyze that data and put it into a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet and an income statement to be able to understand, and then compare that to previous years to understand the investment. Emotions are the same way. Emotions is a big pile of jumble of stuff.
Okay.
We've never been trained to organize and structure. So we need to learn how to structure emotions, and it's not that hard. It is really quite easy, and I can explain that in just a moment. But I want to give people a 50,000 foot level of how this all works. So now we've got our emotions structured, and it's really easy to do. Then the skill is a 3-step process. Number one, whenever you're talking to somebody and it gets the slightest bit emotional, the first thing you're going to do is ignore what they're saying. You're just going to stop listening to them. I know this goes against everything we've ever been taught, but trust me, it works. You're going to completely stop listening to them. And the reason you're going to do that is because you don't want to get triggered by their words.
Okay.
They could be naming, blaming, shaming, whatever they do to you. And you need to ignore all that. Second step, number one, ignore the words. Second step, you're going to read their emotions. What are they experiencing right now emotionally? You say, well, I know how to do that. Well, part of the process is learning how to structure emotions, which I'll talk about in just a second. But really, our brains are hardwired to quickly and accurately and efficiently read the emotions of another person. And this goes back to evolutionary biology. Most people don't know that we humans, Homo sapiens, only developed language and vocabulary less than 30,000 years ago. We've only been talking on this planet for 30,000 years. And that only happened because there were some genetic modifications, mutations that occurred 230,000 years ago that allowed our brains to change and allowed the hypoglossal muscles and nerves, which control our vocalization, to quintuple over 50, 60, 70,000 years. Before that, we didn't have the mechanics to be able to do that. All we could do is grunt.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been, and our predecessors have been around for more than 1 million years on this planet as clans and families and groups. How did we communicate if we couldn't talk to each other?
Body language.
Body language, nonverbal, emotion, all emotional expressions. Our brains are so sensitive to the emotional expressions, the non-verbalized emotional expressions of other humans. All we have to do is pay attention to it. And once we start paying attention to it, we can start reading another person's emotions, and we are accurate, almost never wrong. So that's a second step. Learn how to read emotions. And really the way you do that is just quiet your mind, empty yourself, and just be present. And just let your brain do the work subconsciously, preconsciously. And within a few seconds, again, if you have a structured emotional database, the emotions will start coming into your head. And then you do the third step, which is if you're calming somebody else down, you simply tell them what they're feeling with a you statement. Emma, man, you were really pissed off. You're frustrated. You're angry. You feel like you've been completely disrespected. Nobody's listening to you. You feel completely unappreciated and unsupported. And you're really worried and concerned, and even scared a little bit. And you feel pretty offended by what's going on. And you're a little embarrassed at this point in your relationship that all this is happening. And it makes you sad and unhappy and stressed. And at the end of the day, you feel completely abandoned and rejected and unloved and unlovable. How did that land?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could feel the calming.
Yeah. It's like a massage.
That's right. That's not a bad metaphor. I'm massaging your brain. I'm sticking my fingers in your head, calming everything down. That's exactly what happens. So you're basically reflecting back what somebody is saying with a you statement. Now, if you need to calm yourself down, you say it to yourself. I'm really pissed off. I'm frustrated. I'm angry.
Mm-hmm.
Just go through the emotional database that I'll talk about in a minute. And you just label yourself and you literally can calm yourself down in 90 to 120 seconds. So you can do it to yourself. It's called self-affect labeling, or you can do it to another person, which is called dyadic, or other person, third person affect labeling. In either case, what the science shows is that when you engage in this process, you literally downshift the emotional centers of the brain. They literally calm down. It's the only thing that works. I wouldn't be here talking about this if there was something else that worked. Nonviolent communication does not work. Active listening does not work. All of the different things, taking 10 deep breaths doesn't work. Walking around the block does not work. None of that stuff works. The only thing that works is this, which is what I teach it.
I think that those other techniques that you mentioned, because one of my favorite books is Nonviolent Communication. I think that was what kind of opened the door for me to be like, oh, I can't control other people. I have to listen. Then it started to like into crucial conversations where I'm reading body language and safety.
Yeah.
And then it led to you where you're almost like stripping away all that extra stuff.
That's right.
Off of
You get crucial conversations, difficult conversations with Patton and Sheen, friends of colleagues of mine.
Yeah.
Crucial conversations, they're all in the head.
Yeah.
Nonviolent communication, all in the head. By the way, Rosenberg stole, still probably too strong a word. Let's just say that it looks to me, in my opinion, because I studied this stuff deeply as a scholar, it looks to me like Rosenberg lifted his ideas from Thomas Gordon, who was a mentee of the great humanist psychologist Carl Rogers.
Mm,
And Thomas Gordon started this thing called parent effectiveness training, and then leadership effectiveness training that he did from the 60s, 70s, 60s and 70s, 80s until he became elderly,
okay.
where he was teaching the use of I statements. And the way he was teaching I statements was the correct use of I statements. But again, he was not schooled in emotion.
Okay.
And then Rosenberg comes along and picks up his stuff. And if you look at Gordon's formula, and then you look at nonviolent communication, they're almost identical.
Okay.
And the link is through the University of Wisconsin-Madison. They all got their PhDs, and that's where Rogers was based. And that's kind of the link of how it all came through. But the problem is that none of this stuff works.
Okay.
It never has been. And in fact, I statement, I'll just say, I got it. This is my hobby horse. Don't ever use I statements.
Yeah.
A study came out earlier this year that showed that when therapists use self-referential statements, I statements, in therapy sessions, that the trust level between the patient and the therapist drops precipitously. Hard study.
Okay.
First study to show that I statements do not work. Do not use them.
I always feel a little, I don't know the right word, but when people you say, I feel when you do this,
Yes, exactly. It's
like
patronizing. It's rude.
yes. And it's therapy speak, and
right. It does not work, which is why I teach to use a simple use statement. You're angry. You're frustrated. Now people worry, what if I'm wrong?
Yes, because it can
You're never wrong.
You're never wrong.
Let me tell you what happened.
Backfire a little bit. When I first discovered your work, and I was thinking, okay, we're going to strip away, because what I liked about Crucial Conversations was not necessarily what they were teaching. It was like watching their body language, and when they start showing those nonverbals of being uncomfortable and like, okay, stop what we're talking about. Let's address the emotions. And then, so that's why it led well into what I saw with you. I was like, oh, we're going to strip away all that extra stuff and just focus on the emotions. So my first bumble fisted attempts at it backfired on me, because I would say something like, you're angry, you're frustrated. And they're like, no, I'm not. I'm this. So how do we
let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
You're angry and frustrated. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Right? They're angry and frustrated. Why do they say no? Because their right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex is shut down. That's the part of the brain that processes emotion at a cognitive level. They can no longer process emotion, so they're not just reactive right now.
Okay.
So you label them. They say, no, I'm not. You ignore the no, I'm not, and you say, oh, you're really annoyed and irritated, and you feel completely disrespected and unappreciated and unsupported. Yeah. And you're really anxious and worried. Yeah. And the whole thing just really pisses you off. Yeah.
Do you have
what I do is you've got to de-escalate them to a point where you get their brain reactivated. So when you come back and relabel the anger and frustration, they're going to say yes, because now they can process it. You are not wrong. Your brain is always right. Always right. This is hardwired, and this is hard for people to get because we're so tied into this idea of rationality. We can't fathom the idea that we can actually be emotionally accurate with people. And yet we are. So you never get put off when somebody says, no, I don't feel that. Fine. Label something else and work with it. Work with them.
Okay. So
you're
got more words in than because I would just say.
Well, that's right. Because, all right, let's build our emotional vocabulary.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way, and this is the structuring emotional data that I talked about. Here's how we do it. With negative emotions, I have discovered that emotions come in layers, and you never just have one emotion at a time. When you have emotion, it comes in groups of emotions. And I have organized emotions from the least intrusive to the most intrusive. By intrusive, I mean intimate and deep. Okay. And so the 7 layers are the anger layer, the disrespect layer,
okay,
the fear layer, the let's call it the nausea, the disgust layer. That's number 4. the shame layer, the sadness layer, and the abandonment layer.
No.
These are our 7 layers. And you can see we can go from anger to abandonment. And in fact, when somebody's angry, it's probably because they really do feel abandoned, rejected, and betrayed. So it all links. Now, for each of these layers, there are flavors of that layer that exist. So if we look at the anger layer, you've got anger, rage, you've got frustration, annoyance, irritation, jealousy, are all variations of anger with different intensities and different durations. So, and without getting into the long scientific lecture of what emotions are and aren't, well, let me quickly describe. So we're not born with emotion. That's the first thing to recognize. We are not born with emotion. We create emotions right around 18 months of age as we begin to verbalize as toddlers.
Okay.
And we have to learn how to take what we are born with, which is called affect, A-F-F-E-C-T. We're born with 9 affect. And those 9 affect are positive, neutral, and negative in terms of how we experience them. They're either pleasant or unpleasant.
Okay.
And they also can vary by intensity: weak, moderate, strong, or light intensity, moderate intensity, high intensity. So we can take these 9 affect and like an artist's palette of colors, and our brain can mix and match these different affective experiences. And then we put a word to it, and we call that an emotion that gets stored in the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex. And that's where we store our emotional database. The more emotional words we have that we can associate with all of these different affective states, the more emotionally granular we are. And the more emotionally granular we are, the more emotionally self-aware we are, the more we can self-regulate, the easier it is to affect label, and the more emotionally intelligent we are. So we want to develop emotional granularity. And the problem is that as children, we were taught exactly the opposite. When I was a little boy, 3 years old, well, I couldn't walk until I was 3.5 because I was born with a lot of disabilities. When I was a little boy out running around, when I could find a run around, probably around 4 or 5, I fall over and skin my knee. And what was I told? Don't cry. Suck it up. Little
Rub some
big
dirt
boy,
in it.
don't cry. That's called emotional invalidation. It is the most invasive and insidious form of child abuse that exists.
Yes.
And everybody does it.
Yep.
And what you're basically telling your child to do is don't feel. And when you do that, you destroy their ability to create an emotional database. So most people stop their emotional maturity between 6 and 8 years old. And so they grow cognitively, mature cognitively, but they never allow themselves to grow emotionally. And so that at 40 years old, you see people fighting, you see they're acting like 6-year-olds. Because in that moment, they are 6 years old. They just regress back to the highest level of emotional maturity that they have achieved. So the good news is you can change that. I mean, we all got stuck there. I haven't met a human being yet who got stuck between 6 and 8 years old, realizing the universe is an emotionally unsafe place. I'm going to cover myself up, make sure that nobody can penetrate me. And I'm going to go out and act really competent and, grow up as a competent, mature person. But underneath, I know I'm this scared little 6-year-old because I've built these walls up around me, and I don't care who you are. You're not getting inside my walls. And that's the way we all are. It's self-protective. You have to do that when you're living in a environment where it's not safe to be emotional. And we live in a culture where it's not safe to be emotional. However, once you learn how to affect label, you learn how to listen to and reflect emotions, all that goes away because you immediately create emotional safety.
Okay. All right.
There's a lot to unpack there, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, I went back and watched our old episode and I recognized some of the things I was talking about I'm still struggling with. And I was like, I need to have Doug. It's time to have Doug on the show because I feel like I need a little reboot
Okay.
on some of these things. So let's do a little role play here with some examples. Sure. I set up before we started recording a couple of different examples of the types of listeners we have. So you have someone like me. I've got a partner or a spouse, especially who was the main breadwinner. And then I want to go off and do this risky investment business. And I want to take all this money we made from a house that we sold to go and start this investment business. And people will say, oh, my husband or my wife or my partner didn't support me in that. How did you get your husband to go along with that? I'm like, I don't know. He just he just didn't fight me against it. He didn't diminish. He didn't talk down or try to steal my confidence, or he didn't feel threatened. Like maybe my wife might make more money. So I don't know what to say to people who are in a situation where they have someone who is diminishing that for them.
Okay.
So let's
Let,
start there.
let's start there. All right. So let's start. There are a couple of situations that can come up. Number one, you're in a position where you've got some money, you want to invest it, and you need to talk to your partner or spouse about it. And
Yep.
you're afraid of the reaction that you're going to get. You're afraid that you're going to get dismissed, ridiculed, humiliated, told how stupid you are. Don't do that. It's an idiotic thing to do. That's our big fear. Rejection. So if we think about the 7 layers, where are we? We're already starting out in our own emotional reaction.
Yeah.
Abandonment, rejection, betrayal, feeling unloved and unlovable. So when you think about the conversation, the first thing you have to do is start affect label yourself. What am I feeling? What is my fear? Okay, I'm afraid. I'm a little pissed off. I'm afraid. I'm going to be a little bit offended that I can't make my own decisions. I'm sad because I want support and connection from my partner. But at the end of the line, I'm feeling like I'm going to be abandoned, rejected, and betrayed, and I'm going to feel like I'm unlovable and not worthy of this person. Once you say that to yourself, I mean, I just did it and I just felt completely relaxed. You do this. Then when you go into the conversation, you put yourself, this is a practice. My wife and I call this going into the Buddha bubble.
Okay.
Imagine that you have this sphere of energy around you and nothing can penetrate you. Nothing can penetrate you. It doesn't matter what anybody says. It just bounces off the bubble and goes away and it dissipates. But when you're in the bubble, to maintain that protection, you may not judge, you may not criticize, you may not be reactive. You cannot be reactive. So you have to be non-reactive, non-critical, non-judgmental. And the only thing you can say in the Buddha bubble is what the other person's emotions are.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there and say, so Emma, I've got this investment opportunity. We made $150,000 last week in the stock market. I want to take a profit out because I think we can make 10x. And yeah, there's a lot of risk involved, but the reward is really incredible. And I just want to let you know I'm probably going to do that. And then you say, go ahead and say anything you want.
I thought we were supposed to be on the same page about money.
So you're really feeling a little frustrated and angry, and you feel like you're being ignored. You feel like I've ignored you and I'm not paying attention to you. And that's really frustrating to you. And you're sad about it too.
I feel like you've already made the decision of what you want to do.
So you feel like the decision's already been made and that you were left out of the whole process. And you feel a little abandoned and rejected and betrayed because we didn't talk about this earlier.
Yeah, this is our money, not just your money.
So you're a little worried about the fact that there's a risk involved here because it is our money. And what's really concerning to you is that you've not had a chance to evaluate all the risks and make an independent decision here. And that's very concerning to you. And you also feel a little disrespected that I didn't trust you enough to be able to talk to you before about this.
Yeah, it just feels like you made the decision like you didn't trust that we could do it when I'd rather put it in something a little safer.
Yeah, you feel like I didn't trust you. And yeah, of course, I have not made the investment yet. That's why we're talking about it. But you felt that the fact that I haven't broached the subject earlier to you, it feels to you like a rejection. And it's really disrespectful. And you feel like you're not being heard and your voice isn't important and you feel unappreciated and unsupported.
So are we going to talk about this and come to a joint decision, or are you just going to do whatever you want?
Well, that's a good question. How do you want to solve the problem?
I would rather put it in something safer.
Okay, tell me about that.
I don't know much about investing. That's your thing. You're the one who's always talking about it and researching it.
Okay. So if you're thinking about now at this point in time, now she's calmed down. You can see it. Now we can problem solve and we can negotiate. But you can't do that until you take the 2 or 3 minutes that I took to get you to affect label you, to calm you down. We couldn't have that conversation. Now we can have the conversation. And the conversation can go in a lot of different directions. You say, well, I'm talking about $150,000. That's less than 1% of our total net worth. If we were to lose even half of that, it wouldn't even be a blip on our financial statements.
Mm-hmm.
And you could look at it that way. So you could look at, or you could say, well, $150,000, that's 50% of our liquid net worth. That's a lot of money. Maybe we should not invest it in such a risky proposition.
Yeah.
Well, you can have that discussion, but you can't have that discussion until the emotions are calmed down around the problem.
Okay. Yeah. I think I just revealed a lot about myself with that counter argument there. A little subconscious action. Yeah.
But let's go back and look at all the things that you said. Notice how you attacked me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did I judge, criticize, or get reactive? No. I listened to what you were saying, ignored your attacks, and just reflected on what you were feeling. That's all
Okay.
and by being non-reactive, I could do that. And I knew eventually you would calm down.
How much are you relying on that gut feel, like that women's intuition that we talk about? Because we can subconsciously read body language cues instead of having to study, well, this means contempt and this means, anger, grief. How much of that have you studied on a conscious level? And how much are you just relying on your evolutionary gift
Right.
to recognize?
So, great question. So that the answer to that requires us to talk about empathy a little bit.
Okay. Which
There
I
are
am so mad.
there are a number of different kinds of empathy, but what we're really talking about here is cognitive empathy versus affective empathy.
Okay.
Cognitive empathy is affect labeling. That's where I'm literally calling out, reading your emotions and calling them out. And I'm just doing that. And I'm using my emotional database. Very powerful, very effective. And that's a learnable skill. Most of my clients master this skill in 8 1-hour sessions over 8 weeks. It's just that big a deal to learn. You just need coaching and accountability to get it right.
Okay.
Once you've developed cognitive empathy and you're able to affect label automatically and unconsciously, you develop what's known as affective empathy.
Okay.
And this is what we talked about before, Emma, is that you feel what another person is feeling. You literally experience the same emotions they're feeling.
Yeah.
And that is even faster and more accurate than cognitive empathy.
Oh.
So I can sit there and I can feel what you're feeling, and I'm just going to label what my feeling is because that's what you're experiencing. So I can feel your anger, and I don't mistake it for my own anger because I'm not angry at all. Oh, that's anger. Oh, Emma's angry. Emma's pissed off and angry. And that's called affective empathy. And that's even more powerful. And that just naturally develops as we develop cognitive empathy.
Oh, I feel like it's I don't want it because the problem that I have is I'm in command mode and I'm like,
so here's the problem.
Well, I stop feeling bad.
There you go. So here's the problem. What I'm talking about works for 80% of the population.
Oh,
The other 20%, which I think you fall into, you are what is known as HSI, a highly sensitive individual. You have 20% of the population are naturally empathic, and they have a high degree of empathic sensitivity where they just feel everything that's going on around them. They're in the supermarket, and all of a sudden they feel this burst of rage, and it turns out that there's somebody three aisles over who's really pissed off at something, and you pick it up. All right?
Yeah.
That's different. Though people who are HSI need to learn how to affect label so they can learn how to discern their own emotional experience from the emotional experiences of other people. They have to learn discernment, and affect labeling is the way they do that. And once you learn to own your own emotions and to return the emotional experience of other people back to them, which is really my wife's teaching, not mine, then you get calm and centered and grounded because you are no longer being whipsawed by all the emotions around you.
I feel like I have put in too much detachment, and so I come off as cold and unfeeling because I can't get in the hole. So when you say highly sensitive individual, for those of us who struggle with that,
That's right.
we are going to reject that label because we have so many defensive walls around us. Like, no, I'm out of touch. I'm emotionally unavailable.
I'm it's not a pejorative at all. It's just it just describes a certain condition that people find themselves in. And you're right. So what do you do? What do you do to protect yourself? You build up all these walls. You suppress your emotions so that you don't feel that pain, and that's what you have to do to survive
Hmm.
until you learn the skills that allow you to utilize what is really a gift in an effective way, in a way that not only does not destroy you, but it empowers you.
It
And
can
that's
be in
lots of
practice.
skills that you have to learn.
Yeah.
That's the work of my wife, Alea Deha. That's
Yeah.
what she does. um, and because that's all she does is work with highly empathic people, both coaches, therapists, and people who have high emotional sensitivity. And she teaches them how to ground so that they can master that skill and not let it master them.
Hmm. What's the difference between this highly sensitive individual that you say is roughly 20% of the population versus the 80%? What things are going to work for 100% of people, and which would we have to tailor depending on our natural inclination?
Affect labeling is going to work for everybody, but it's going to work in different ways. For the 80% of people who are not naturally empaths, they're not highly sensitive. Affect labeling will teach you how to be empathic, how to listen to the emotions of another person and reflect those emotions with a you statement, to calm them down, to soothe them, to downshift their emotions so that you can have that conversation without it being difficult. For the 20% that are highly sensitive, learning how to affect label becomes important because now it's going to teach you how to discern what are other people feeling versus what am I feeling.
Hmm.
And now when you start feeling this melange of emotions coming through, you can quickly say, that's not my feeling. That's not mine. That's not mine. That's not mine. That's not mine. And you can just dismiss it, or you can affect label it away. And you can then see, okay, this is my emotion. This is what I'm experiencing right now. Just because you're pissed off doesn't mean that I need to take that feeling and have it as my own.
Does a person who doesn't naturally, the 80%, um would those more conscious studies of body language, facial expressions, nonverbals be helpful to them, or do you find it to be more of a detriment?
It's
They're
a
trying to
detriment.
your sensitivity up.
It's a detriment because what you're doing is you're trying to do a thing, read
Yeah.
facial expression or read
It's like
body language.
learning a language by not even a dictionary.
Your brain knows how to do this. You don't.
Okay.
It's not a skill you have to practice. And in fact, if you start using a cognitive load to try to analyze thinking wise, you'll never get it. It's too slow.
Okay.
Your cognitive processing is too slow. Let your preconscious brain do the work for you. It's all outside of consciousness. Don't worry about it. And the result is so much easier and faster. Don't even try to do that stuff. All you got to do is be present with somebody. And if you get the 7 layers figured out, then all you have to do is plug in. What's the most obvious layer that's showing right now? Is it anger, sadness, frustration, disgust? Fine. I start there. And maybe I label 2 or 3 emotions within that layer. And then I watch. Okay, what else is there? Oh, yeah, anger. Let me go up to the top. Anger, annoyance, irritation. Oh, frustration. That's a big one. Why? Oh, disrespect, not being heard, being invisible, unappreciated, unsupported. And you
Mhm.
just work through the layers. And that it's so much easier.
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like sometimes that gut and that intuition, we're trying to put something scientific on top of it when we just need to trust like evolution is
Trust
taking care of.
ourselves. That
Yeah.
it's good to understand the science behind it. It's good to know that this is not pop psychology. It's not woo
Mhm.
woo. It's hard neuroscience. That's a good thing to know. But you don't need to know anything more than that to do the practice.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't need to know how to fix a car to be able to drive a car.
Exactly
Okay.
right. You don't need to know why does the gasoline explode in the cylinder when there's an air gas mixture and what's the chemical composition of the gasoline that makes it so volatile.
Yeah.
You don't need to know that.
And even though my husband is a great auto mechanic and can fix anything that's wrong with our car, he's not thinking about that stuff while he's driving. He's just
No.
in his driving. So
Right.
it's even people who know a lot about this, there's still this instinctual level. So let's do another little role play here before we wrap up. And just real quickly, let's put us back in the same positions that we were. I'm the angry, emotionally immature. You are trying to do the technique that you showed before, but you find yourself starting to get wrapped up in your own emotion and you're starting to get irritated and you're starting to get outside of your bubble. How do
I'm
you
getting
calm yourself down in the middle of this kind of tense interaction?
all right. So This takes a little bit more training,
Okay.
a little more practice, let's say.
Okay.
But I start keying in on somatics. What am I feeling right now? I know that when I get frustrated or I get angry, the first thing that happens is my face gets flushed.
Okay.
So if I start feeling a flushed face and I start hearing my voice increase in intensity,
Mm-hmm.
that's an indicator to me I'm getting emotionally aroused. So what
Okay.
do I do? Take a deep breath. I sort of look down for a second and I'm not looking at anybody. And I just say to myself, I'm really angry. I'm frustrated. I'm pissed off. I feel completely disrespected. I'm not being listened to. I'm not being respected. And I'm completely unappreciated and unsupported. And I'm a little worried about that. And I'm also disgusted. And I'm sad because I'm looking for connection and support and it's not there. And I'm feeling a little abandoned and betrayed and rejected right now. And I look up and I'm completely relaxed.
This that you just did there, I think the more you do it to yourself, the more natural it can come off when you're doing it to someone else. So they don't then feel patronized and say, no, why are you trying to put words in my
Yeah,
mouth? Or those other,
that's an interesting observation. What I learned working 10 years in maximum security prisons, training incarcerated people how to do this to stop prison violence, is that I found that when they developed the ability to self-affect label only after they had practiced dyadic affect labeling,
oh, okay.
calming other people down. I don't know why that is. You would think, well, I think I do know why it is. People who are incarcerated they're way below baseline in terms of emotional intelligence, right? They don't have a working vocabulary of emotion. So by affect labeling other people,
Mm,
they were able to start developing emotional granularity because they had to have words to be able to label their people. And as they learned emotional words going through the 7 layers, that became embedded within them. And then that gave them access to emotional words to that they labeled with their own stuff. And so then they were able to self-affect label much more effectively and calm themselves down. That's been my experience. I haven't seen anybody really get good self-affect labeling until they have actually practiced affect labeling other people.
interesting. I
It is,
wonder if
it's backwards from what we
for,
think.
for a subset of people, I wonder if that might, like what you're talking about.
It could be. There could be people who are emotionally have a good emotional vocabulary and they can affect label themselves, and then that gives them the ability to label somebody else's emotions.
Yeah. I just
I
feel like when I first started trying it with my kids, it came off as very ungenuine. And
that's because
yes.
you got to practice this stuff.
Yes.
And here's the key: when I teach this, I don't want you to jump into the families. In fact, I tell my students the last place you're going to practice this is in your family.
Okay.
Do not take this on.
Nice.
Do not try it on your husband or your spouse. If you've got small children, 3 to 8, it'll work great. You can do it on dogs and cats. They love it. That's great. But you've got to practice in socially safe situations where the risk of failure is 0.
Okay.
My favorite place, Starbucks.
Okay.
Why? You walk into Starbucks in the morning, you order your coffee or whatever you're getting, and you look at the barista and you say, "You look really happy today. You're
Oh,
really happy today." And you get a happy emotion, a positive emotion. You affect label with a you statement, and then you watch how they react.
oh, I love that. That was worth staying.
And you
for
do
a minute.
you do this 3, 4, 5 times a week for 2 or 3 weeks, and you're going to see the same basic reaction every single time. You go into a restaurant, you sit down. "Hi, I'm Doug. I'm your server tonight." "Hey, Doug, you look really excited. You're going to have a big tip night tonight." You have no clue, but it doesn't matter. You're labeling. You go to the checkout at Trader Joe's or Market, right? Your supermarket. "Wow, you look really excited. You're almost off your shift." You have not a clue. The answer is going to be either yes, and they get really excited, or no, I just started my shift. I've got 8 hours to go. Or, well, I'm in the middle of my shift and I'm almost home. And then you just affect label that. And so you're really excited, you're almost ready to go on, or kind of dreading the next 8 hours. "Oh, wow, you're halfway through. That's pretty exciting. You're really looking forward to getting on tonight and watching a movie." You just listen to them
Yeah.
and pay attention. And it doesn't matter if you blow it. They don't care. In fact, they like it because it's the first time they're ever recognized as human beings.
Yeah. And this also gets through to people who struggle to receive compliments. So I like that because sometimes people complain, especially women. We only compliment your hair or the way that you look or your outfit, those kinds of things. But this is a way to give somebody a compliment in a way that feels very genuine and non-threatening. So for
We're-
people who struggle to give or receive compliments, I really like what you just said there. And
Right.
that hit a little switch flip for me when you just said that. So this
Right.
conversation I think
And
has been very, very valuable in a
the,
lot of ways.
the phrase that I coined, and there's a long story about how I learned this, listen other people into existence.
Yes.
Listen them into existence. That's all we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
We all have a deep need to be heard and validated. And yet we never have that need met because we're so focused on getting our own needs met that we don't think about, well, how do I satisfy another person's need? And when you think about an argument is all about not being heard.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
why do we raise our voices in an argument?
Just so you can be heard.
I want to be heard. And so we naturally start shouting because you're not listening to me. You're not hearing me. And why am I not hearing you? Because I'm so focused on you, getting you to listen to me, that it doesn't occur to me that I need to listen to you before I can get my need met.
I see okay, I'm gonna practice. I see in you a great satisfaction and happiness that you can share this message with people. And I see not only on the negative conflict resolution side, but also on the positive connection side. So I love seeing that in you. This is a great message. What is the first book people should start with? And if they want to get a hold of you directly, how do they do that?
Right. Okay, a couple of things. First of all, the book you need to read is my fourth book called De-Escalate,
Okay.
How to Calm an Angry Person in 90 Seconds or Less. You can, it's available everywhere. It's Simon & Schuster, my publisher, so you can get it on Amazon. You can email me at Doug, D-O-U-G, at dougnoll.com. And I actually have something for everybody. I call it my Peace Under Pressure Kit. And I haven't done this before, so this is the first time. I have a course called how to deal with anger and aggression. It's an online video course, and it includes all of these skills. And if you just email me, I'll email you access to the course for free. And typically, it sells for a couple of $1,000. And we're playing around with artificial intelligence right now. So I have the De-Escalate Advisor in ChatGPT, and I'll send you that link. And what you can do with that is you can put in a situation, and it will coach you back on what to say. It's really kind of cool how we're working. So all you got to do is just email me at doug@dougnoll.com. Put in the subject line. I got a word here so that I can keep track. Yeah, put in emotional risk 25 in the subject line, so I know that it came from Emma from this show, and I'll get right back to you. I'm a sole practitioner. I don't have a big staff. I don't have anybody screening my emails. I get up every morning and go through 250 emails. That's kind of that deal.
Yes.
So I'm happy to help. And there it is, emotional risk 25. And my life is devoted to teaching people these skills, because imagine what our society would be like if even 10% of us were able to listen the other 90% into existence.
Yes.
All of this crap we're seeing with political polarization and all the bullshit, gone.
Yeah.
I watch it happen in prisons. I watch it happen in schools. There is no reason why we can't, as a society, as a country, change everything by just taking the time to listen to each other.
Yes. Beautiful. Doug, you're a man on a mission, and it's a beautiful mission. And like I said, I'm glad that you came to give me a little primer, a little refresher. Being able to talk to you about this stuff directly has been extremely helpful to me in my home, with my relationship with my kids, but with my business partners, and also with my own internal journey. It's been fantastic. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing that with the listeners. And like I said, I can just tell how much joy and satisfaction you take from it. So I want to invite all of you who are listening to please reach out to either Doug or me. These offers and this kind of information changed my life and helped me build wealth in a way that I was never able to build before, because I couldn't get a hold on some of the emotional blocks that I was having. And the wealth came as a byproduct of developing a better emotional skill set and a better way of communicating. So it has improved my life across the board. So not just with building wealth, but that's kind of the focus of the show. So if that's something that you would like to learn more about, please contact Doug. And at any time, if you want to get a hold of me, investwithemma.com, and be sure to go leave 5-star reviews on my podcast and on Doug's podcast. I've never asked for that before, but it is true. That is the way that the podcast gets spread. There's really no other way to promote it other than leaving reviews and having the algorithm kind of push that up. It's been very frustrating to try to grow a show. And that is the number one thing that is, and that we can't do for ourselves, that only you can do, is go listen to Doug's show, leave him a 5-star review. And I would really appreciate it if you would do the same and get this message out to more people. So thank you so much for joining us. I will see you next week on our next passive income adventure.